It was 1 in the morning when I heard the knock. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Who comes to your door at that hour? I froze, holding my breath, listening. And then it came again. Louder, more frantic. You know that kind of pounding that doesn't ask permission? The kind that begs you to open, no matter how much your gut tells you not to? My chest tightened. I grabbed my phone, tiptoed across the living room, and pulled back the curtain just enough to peek outside. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a neighbor. It was my mother. She was swaying on her feet, one hand braced against the door frame, her face pale under the porch light. And then, before I could even shout her name, she collapsed. I threw the door open so fast it slammed into the wall. Her body hit the floor with a dull thud, and my knees buckled as I dropped beside her. "Mom! Mom, can you hear me?" Her lips moved, her voice no louder than a whisper. I had to lean in so close that her breath tickled my ear, and what she said froze every drop of blood in my body. "Your father, he hit me. Because of her. One word, sharp and poisonous. I didn't need her to say the name. I already knew." I pressed a towel against the cut on her cheek, trying to steady her trembling. My mind raced. Paramedics, police, neighbors. But the one thought that drowned out everything else was this. How do you call the cops when the abuser is your own father? Would you? Could you? What would you do if the man who raised you, the man you were taught to respect, was the same man who left your mother bleeding on your doorstep at 1 in the morning? Her eyes fluttered open for a second, locking onto mine. There was no strength there, only pain and shame. She tried to sit up, but her body gave out. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling the weight of a lifetime that had been broken in one violent moment. The night outside was silent, but in my chest, thunder roared. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Every sound was amplified. The creak of the door, the rustle of the towel, the faint hum of the streetlight. My world shrank down to the space between my arms and my mother's fading strength. I kept whispering, "You're safe now. You're safe." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Because if he had already crossed this line once, what would stop him from crossing it again? I wanted to dial 911. My thumb hovered over the screen, but something inside me hesitated. Reporting him meant the entire world would know. The neighbors, his friends, our family. He wasn't just a man. He was my father. He was the man who taught me to ride a bike. The man who once clapped the loudest at my graduation. And yet, this was also the man who left his wife broken at my door. I pulled the phone back to my chest and looked down at my mother again. She mouthed one word, and it was enough to snap my hesitation in half. Help. That was it. Not a scream, not a lecture, just one word. And I realized it wasn't just her asking for help. It was every version of her, the young woman who once dreamed of a better life, the mother who worked 2 jobs, the person who had endured years of silence. She was asking for help because she couldn't carry it anymore. And if I didn't answer, who would? So I made a choice. Right there, in the quiet, with my mother cradled in my arms and the clock ticking past 1 in the morning, I decided I wasn't going to be the daughter who looked away. I was going to be the daughter who stood up. Because silence protects no one. But here's the question I need to ask you. If you were standing in my shoes, if it was your mom collapsing on your doorstep, would you have the strength to open that door and face what was waiting on the other side? I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the bruises swelling under her skin, the way her body crumpled against my floor, the whisper of her voice, confessing what he had done, my own father. I sat at the kitchen table, the overhead light buzzing, my phone open in front of me. I should have been dialing the police. Instead, I was scrolling through the photos I had just taken. Her arm mottled with purple, the gash on her cheek, evidence. Cold, undeniable evidence. It felt wrong. Taking pictures of your own mother like she was a crime scene victim, but she was. And the suspect? The man who used to kiss me goodnight. I whispered to myself, if I don't document this, who will believe us? That was the question gnawing at me, because men like him, they don't look like abusers. They look polished, charming, the neighbor everyone trusts. I could already hear the excuses. Maybe she tripped. Maybe she provoked him. He's such a good man. He would never. Would you believe your neighbor if they told you my story? Or would you look for reasons to explain it away? That thought burned inside me. So I clicked more photos, angles, close-ups, each shot a silent scream. This is real. This happened. Don't you dare deny it. While she slept on my couch, I sat in the dark, staring at her. And for the first time, I noticed how small she looked. This woman who once carried me on her back up 2 flights of stairs when I was sick. This woman who worked late shifts at the diner, then came home to pack my lunch for school. Now, reduced to shadows under her eyes and trembling hands. And here's the part that cut the deepest, I flashed back. Suddenly, I was 6 again. The sound of laughter filling our old living room. My father, sitting cross-legged on the floor, helping me build a Lego tower. My mom, in the kitchen, humming along to a radio song, her apron dusted with flour. I remember thinking back then, this is what love looks like. That memory hit me like a punch, because the man who taught me to balance a bike was now the man who shoved my mother into the ground. The woman who once spun me around in circles until I was dizzy now sat broken in my living room. How do you reconcile that? How do you hold 2 truths that cancel each other out? I pressed record on my phone and started talking out loud, like I'm talking to you now. If anyone finds this later, I need you to know she didn't fall. She didn't slip. He hit her. And he's going to try to cover it up, but not this time, not anymore. The red light blinked back at me, steady, as if it agreed. When morning came, she tried to brush it off. She sat up, pulled her sweater tighter, and whispered, "Don't make this bigger than it is, Chloe. I'll be fine." I couldn't hold back. "Fine?" "Mom, you were bleeding on my floor. Do you think this will stop on its own?" Her eyes darted away. Shame flickered there, heavier than the bruises. She wanted to protect me. She always had. But what she didn't understand was that she didn't need to shield me anymore. I was grown, and I was ready to shield her, so I started collecting more. Text messages on her phone, bank statements with unexplained withdrawals, receipts from dinners for 2. Every shred of paper was a clue. Every screenshot a lifeline. The story wasn't just about bruises. It was about betrayal. About a husband who siphoned money to wine and dine another woman while his wife clipped coupons to keep the lights on. I asked her gently, "How long has it been going on?" Her silence was the answer. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in that silence. You could feel years of suffering pressed into it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march down the street to his house and pound on his door the way she had pounded on mine. But I knew rage without proof is just noise, and noise doesn't hold up in court. So I steadied my hands and told her, "We're not letting him bury this, not again. And maybe you're wondering, why didn't she leave before? Why didn't she pack her bags and go the first time he raised a hand? That's the cruelest part. Abuse doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It tricks you into thinking it's normal, that you deserve it, that you can't survive without the person who's hurting you." She had been surviving on whispers, but I was done whispering. That morning, as sunlight bled through the blinds, I promised myself something. We were going to drag the truth into the light, even if it scorched. So here's my question for you. If it were your family, if the bruises belonged to your mother, would you risk tearing everything apart to expose the truth? Or would you keep pretending, just to preserve the image of peace. By late afternoon, the sky over Seattle turned the color of wet slate. I rode the bus up Pike, stared at my reflection warping in the window, and repeated a name in my head until it stopped feeling like a rumor and started feeling like a target. Valerie. People had whispered it for months. A woman with perfect nails and a laugh that cut. A fixture on Capitol Hill, always in the same orbit. Dim bars, velvet booths, men who wanted to be seen supporting her chair with their knees. I told myself I was only going to look, to confirm, to move on. You ever say that to yourself before walking into a fire? The bouncer at the bar hardly looked at me. Inside, the place smelled like citrus cleaner and stale whiskey. Neon tubing bled electric pink across the bottles, making everything look sweeter than it tasted. Conversations hummed low, like a hive deciding who to sting. I took a stool at the far end and ordered water because my hands were already shaking. I scanned faces, not for beauty, for intent. She announced herself without trying, a black blazer, white silk cami, hair the sort of blonde you pay for. Her mouth tipped into a little curve as if the room had told a private joke only she could hear. She didn't look cruel. That's how cruelty walks in public, polished, practiced, never breathless. I watched her for a while. She wasn't alone. A man with a loosened tie leaned in so close his cologne drifted my way. She touched his wrist when she laughed. Men like handholds. She gave him one. And then she turned just a little, and her eyes slid over the room. Bored, hungry, bored again, until they landed on me. Recognition is a strange thing when it happens between strangers. Her chin lifted half an inch. My stomach dropped the rest of the way. She excused herself from the tie and walked toward me like the ground made promises. "Do we know each other?" she asked, voice softened with cotton. The kind of voice that gets favors in crowded places. "We don't," I said. "But you know my parents?" A pause, just a blink. Then the smile returned like a reflex. "Do I?" "You know my father," I said, letting the word sink. "And because of that, my mother knows pain. If you're looking for a confession, don't expect it to arrive wrapped in remorse." She laughed. Quiet, precise. "Oh, right. You must be Chloe." Hearing my name in her mouth felt like someone twisting a ring too tight. "I am." She leaned her elbows on the bar as if we were old friends comparing nail colors. "He talks about you. Says you're stubborn. Stubborn is cute until it isn't. You think this is cute?" "I think adults make choices." She shrugged. "Some marriages are theater. Your mom prefers tragedies." I swallowed the words that shot to my tongue because rage wastes oxygen. "She prefers the truth," I said. "So do I." Valerie's eyes flicked to the door, then back. "Do you always come to introduce yourself?" "That's bold. I came to say one thing." I slid a photo across the bar face down. Not a bruise, not blood. A screenshot, 2 wine glasses, and a little note in his hand. "You deserve better." The timestamp parked right on a night my mother waited 2 hours for a husband who never came home. She turned the photo over, glanced, and smirked like I'd presented a coupon that had expired. "Sweet," she said, tapping the glass with a fingernail. "He's learning to express himself." My jaw clenched so hard the word fractured in my throat. "He's learning how to hurt." She tilted her head. "You think he needed me to learn that?" Silence opened between us. The bartender pretended not to listen and polished the same tumbler until it gleamed. Somewhere behind me a stool scraped, then settled. I kept my voice low. "Walk away." "From what?" she asked. "A man who chose something new?" "That's not a crime. It's a pattern. Men leave, women survive. I don't write the rule book. I just stopped pretending I didn't know the rules." "You're not a rule," I said. "You're an accelerant." For the first time, something flared in her gaze. Irritation? Amusement? It passed quick, like heat lightning. "You want me to apologize," she said. "People always want women to apologize for wanting he. I want you to stop helping him destroy what he hasn't earned." "You're angry at the wrong woman," she said, almost gentle. "You should talk to your mother." Ask her why she stayed so long, the question cut. Not because I hadn't asked it, because she asked it like a taunt. I felt the room tighten, my chest with it. "Don't talk about her," I said. "Then stop bringing her into bars," she replied, smile sharpening. "Stop dragging her shadow behind you like a cape." I could have thrown the water in her face, could have said a dozen words I would regret later. Instead, I reached for quiet, because quiet carries farther when it's true. "Listen carefully," I said. "I'm not here to warn you. I'm here to witness you. I want to remember exactly how you smiled when I told you what he did. That way, when this goes public, I won't forget the shape of your mouth." Valerie's fingers paused on the stem of her glass. She set it down. "You think you can hurt me?" "I think the truth will hurt you for me." Her earrings caught the neon and flared like tiny signals. She stood straighter. "Your father told me you were dramatic," she said. "He said you like to play cop off duty." I smiled without teeth. "Tell him I'm done playing." For a moment the mask slipped. She blinked, slow, controlled, but her nostrils flared like someone had taken her place in line. Then the mask settled again. "You're young," she said. "You still think the world punishes bad people and rewards good ones. I think the world looks the other way until someone makes it look back." She sighed. "Go home, Chloe. Be a good daughter. Let adults decide adult things." I slid off the stool and felt the room tilt like a boat. "Adults don't put their hands on women," I said. "Cowards do." She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume. Sweet at first, then cloying. "You're right," she said, so softly I almost missed it. "And yet here we are." I didn't make him a coward. I just stopped pretending he wasn't. We stood there, inches and years apart. I thought of my mother biting her lip to keep from crying. I thought of the towel I pressed to her cheek, the word help like a bell in the dark. I breathed in, slow, steady. "Enjoy the room while you can," I said. "Enjoy the drinks, the attention, the jokes. Because soon the story shifts. And when it does, people remember different things. They remember not the silk and the smile, but the bruise that paid for it." Her smile faltered. Only a millimeter, but I saw it. Then the man with the loose tie returned, confused at our quiet, and placed a hand on her shoulder like a stamp. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Perfect," Valerie said, eyes never leaving mine. Just meeting the past, I turned to go. The door breathed cold air onto my face. Rain beaded on the awning and leapt to my cheeks like startled birds. My hands shook. Not from fear. From the surge that comes when you walk out of a room and don't look back. On the sidewalk, the city swallowed me. Bus brakes hissing, a bike bell, a siren rolling somewhere far. I pulled my phone out and typed a single line in my notes. She smiled when I told her. Then I added another. "We're done being quiet." I wish I could tell you that confrontation felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like setting a match to a soaked string and watching the smoke argue with the rain. But that's how fires start, in the stubborn places. If you've ever had to face the person who helped break your family, you know the tremor that lives in your ribs after. You know the urge to run and the even stronger urge to stand. Which one would you follow? I turned my collar up and started walking, not away, not toward, through. Because the only path out was straight into the storm that made us. If this story is catching your breath, share it with someone who needs a hand in the dark. You never know whose door might be waiting at 1 a.m. By morning I had a folder, not a neat one, a storm. Photos, screenshots, receipts sliding against each other like loose shingles in wind. I zipped it shut and held it to my chest the way you hold something fragile and dangerous at once. Then I called James. James Ellison has the kind of voice that irons a room. He'd known my mother since before I was born, drafted wills and cooled neighbors down over fence lines. "Bring what you have," he said, "and breathe on the way." His office sits above a music shop near the courthouse. Stairs that complain with every step. The hallway smelled like lemon polish and old paper. He met me at the door with a nod instead of a hug, which was perfect. Hugs unspool you, nods anchor you. We didn't waste words. I emptied the folder across his desk. Photos first, then the text messages, then the bank statements with restaurant names that glittered and room charges that pretended to be business. James didn't say, "Oh dear," or "how awful." He said, "Date, time." "Who saw her after?" I answered, and he wrote. Precise, small, the handwriting of a man who understands courts don't reward adjectives. "Assault is one track," he said, sorting the stack. "We'll move on it." But if he's been moving money, that's a separate river. Sometimes the river drowns a man faster than the blow. Money. I'd stared at numbers until they blurred, but hearing him say it made my jaw clench. "He's not just cheating," I said. "He's financing it." James nodded. "Then we trace. Start with what's yours. Joint accounts, property, anything with both names." I called my mother from his landline so she wouldn't have to find her voice in front of my fear. She whispered routing numbers she'd once known by heart and now had to dig for like lost buttons. While she spoke, I looked out the window. Rain-stitched Pike Street. People walked below with hoods up, all of us pretending our lives were dry. When I hung up, James logged into public records. The county site is a relic, gray, boxy, allergic to beauty. He moved through it like a mechanic through an old engine. Search, deeds, grantor, grantee. Years narrowed to months, months to a week that already made my stomach hurt. "What are we looking for exactly?" I asked, as if naming it might make it smaller. "Anything he's signed that changes ownership," he said. "Real estate is the family backbone. People who want to control you try to cut your spine." He clicked, and the screen bloomed with lines of black text. A legal description longer than a hymn, parcel numbers, past owners, then a line that bent the air in the room. Grantor, Robert Hale. Grantee, Valerie Kincaid. My body knew before my mouth did. Heat up the neck, hands colder. "No," I said. Just that. The word failed damn. James zoomed in. The property was small but not meaningless, a strip of land my grandfather mowed until his knees quit. It was supposed to be my mother's cushion, rainy day security, a thing you hold not for status but for sleep. He printed it. The whir of the machine sounded immoderate, like laughter during a prayer. He slid the paper to me with a pen. "Read," he said. "Slow." The page smelled faintly of toner. The signature was my father's. Careful, confident, a hand that had never learned to second-guess itself. Underneath, a notary stamp from 3 months ago. James tapped that circle with the pen tip. "Key," he said. "We'll pull the notary book. See who presented ID, who witnessed. If this was rotten, the rot will show." Can he do this? I heard how small the question sounded, how childish, like asking whether thunder is allowed to be loud. "Not legally," James said. "If title ties to your mother through community property or prior designation, this transfer is a swipe of a pen against a wall of law. But here's the good news. Paper sins leave paper footprints. Mort." He stood, crossed to a file cabinet, and returned with a yellow pad, the color of warnings, and began to structure my mess into something you could carry into a courtroom without it spilling everywhere. 2 tracks, he repeated, drawing down the page. Track A, protective order for your mother. Track B, property injunction, fraud challenge. We can file both. The court likes tidy. We'll give them tidy thunder, tidy thunder. It landed somewhere behind my ribs and steadied. We called the notary. She was brisk until James said the names. Then her voice softened like she'd stepped closer to the phone. "I remember," she said. "He was insistent." The woman with him talked faster than he did. "Describe the IDS," James asked. "And the forms you recorded?" She did. Numbers, dates, James wrote. When he hung up, he looked at me, not over me. "We have a seam to pull." He drafted a letter right then requesting copies of the notary journal and the acknowledgement page. His fingers tapped while he typed. A metronome for momentum. I watched the words appear. "We believe the transfer was executed in violation of statutory and equitable interests." It was like watching brick lay itself. "Breathe," he said again when I realized I'd been holding mine. "I'm okay." "You're not," he said, not unkindly, "but you will be. Now, there's something I need from you." "What?" "Resolve. Because once we file, secrets don't sneak around anymore," they shout. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for neighbors to have opinions, for friends to pick sides, for the past to show up in better lighting? I thought of Valerie's smirk under neon, of my mother flinching at sounds no one else heard, of how quiet our hallway felt when I tucked her into my couch like a child. "I'm ready," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. James slid a stack back toward me. "Then we start with an affidavit. Your statement of facts. Keep it clean. No adjectives you can't prove. Dates, times, what you saw, what you documented." Lawyers are allergic to adverbs. I nodded and began. The pen felt heavier than it should have. On the night of, I observed, photographs were taken at. Writing it turned the air dense. But it also turned the night into a thing with corners. You can hold a thing with corners. Halfway down the page, my phone buzzed. A new email blinked into my inbox. Subject line, transaction confirmation. A recent credit card charge at a jewelry store I'd pass on my way home. He was still spending, still decorating a lie. The rage that rose was hot and clean. James saw my face and didn't ask. He just tilted his chin toward the printer. "Forward it," he said. "We'll add it. Here's the pattern interrupt no one warns you about. The moment the story stops feeling like a story and starts feeling like math. Line items, sums, transfers. You find calm in arithmetic because numbers don't gaslight you. They don't tell you that you misunderstood what your eyes saw. They just add. And the total is the truth." By mid-afternoon, we had a lightweight case that felt heavy. Protective order draft, injunction draft, a list of exhibits with names that sound asleep until you wake them. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. "The court will listen if the paper speaks," James said. "What if the paper isn't loud enough?" I asked. "Then we bring more paper." He smiled, but it didn't reach for levity. "And we find people who remember." He called the county recorder's office. A clerk confirmed the deed's recording number and promised to pull the original image for certified copies. We scheduled a pickup. "Chain of custody," James murmured when he hung up, mostly to himself. "We babysit every page." The sky outside had cleared to a faded blue. My stomach reminded me it was attached to a human being. James offered me a peppermint from a square glass dish. It dissolved on my tongue and made the whole office smell like a holiday that refused to leave. "Before you go," he said, "there's one more conversation." "With who?" "Your father," he said. "Not today, not here, but soon. When he's served, he'll rage, wants a stage. Don't give it one. Don't meet him where he performs." "I won't," I said, but my hands said otherwise. They tightened on the pen like it was a lifeline. "Look at me," James said. I did. "The law is not a feeling, it's a framework. Walk in it. Let it be the bad cop. You, meanwhile, be a daughter who tells the truth. A daughter who tells the truth?" The words clicked into place. Not hero, not vigilante, not saint. Just someone who stops pretending the house isn't on fire because the flames are polite. We printed the affidavit for my signature and attached the exhibits. James used metal clips that clamped with a satisfying bite. He slid everything into a Redwell. "I'll file first thing," he said. "The protective order request goes with it. We're also asking the court to freeze transfers on any asset tied to your mother's interest." "What happens next?" I asked. "Process server finds him." Judge sets a hearing. "We present a clean story." He glanced at the clock. "Between now and then, you protect your mom, you document. And you let me worry about the rest." I stood, lighter and heavier at once. That's what hope feels like when it's new. It weighs what it promises to carry. On the way out, I paused on the landing and looked down through the stairwell. The music shop below plucked the first bars of a song I knew from childhood. Something in me ached and straightened at the same time. I pressed my palm against the folder, felt the square corners through the cardboard. Here's the stakes, in case the rain on the street tried to wash them away. If the court didn't believe the paper, my mother could lose more than a marriage. She could lose what her father left her, what she tended, what she survived for. If the court believed us, we might get to sleep without listening for footsteps. I stepped into the light drizzle and started toward the recorder's office to pick up certified copies. Every crosswalk felt like a decision. Every red hand blinked wait. Every white figure said, go. I waited when I had to. I went when I could. And if you're watching this because you're standing at your own crosswalk, folder in hand, not sure your legs will move, hear me. Numbers don't lie. Paper remembers. And when you put both in front of people who are paid to listen, sometimes the ground shifts. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the truth can be counted, clipped, and carried into a room where power has to answer for itself. We're not done. But for the first time, the fight has a shape. The King County Courthouse doesn't look like justice. It looks like brick and windows and a flag that snaps in the wind because nobody asked it to be quiet. We climbed the steps slowly, my mother on my arm, James on her other side, each stare a decision not to turn around. People pretended not to stare. People are terrible at pretending. Inside, the hall smelled like dust and lemon oil. Benches lined the walls. A bulletin board sagged with notices. Our courtroom door was propped open by a rubber wedge shaped like a boot. We slipped in and took the second row. Second row means you're serious but not desperate. I told myself we weren't desperate. Robert was already at counsel table, dark suit. Tie knotted like he'd trained for it. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, as if the judge would materialize faster if he willed it. Valerie took the back bench, legs crossed, sunglasses pushed up like a tiara. Her mouth had that same tiny curve. She was dressed for a play. I was not in the audience. James leaned close. "When it starts, breathe through your nose," he whispered. Slow. Jurors watch more than they listen. There weren't jurors today, just a judge. But the advice held, everyone watches, everyone decides. The clerk called the case. The sound echoed up into the rafters like it needed the extra space. "'Cause number," papers shuffled, a door opened. The judge entered without drama. Some people bring thunder in their walk. She brought a white light that told you where to stand. We stood, we sat. James rose first. He did not perform. He told a story that fit inside sentences you could carry without them breaking. "Your Honor, we seek a protective order and an injunction to preserve community assets pending dissolution. I have exhibits." He gestured to the Redwell. The word exhibits made my skin prickle. Exhibits are the pieces of a life that still speak when mouths fail. "Proceed," the judge said. James called me. The oath dried my throat. I sat. The upholstery squeaked. The microphone hummed the way a rim does when your finger circles it. "State your name," James said. "Chloe Hale. And your relation to Mary Hale. I'm her daughter." The word landed heavy. Daughter is simple until it has to testify. "Chloe," James said, voice steady, On the night of... He gave the date. Did your mother come to your residence? She did. In what condition? I breathed in. Out. She was injured, cut on her cheek, bruising, shaking. He placed Exhibit A on the easel. The photo of her face filled the screen on the wall. The room went very quiet. Valerie's sunglasses slid down her nose. She pushed them back up like a reflex, as if glare might save her from seeing. Did you take this photo? I did. When? Within minutes of her arrival. He led me through the series, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, close-ups, timestamps. My voice didn't lift or fall. It stayed in the pocket where facts live. He asked about the towel, about the couch, about what she said. I kept my answers tight. I could feel the judge watching the spaces between my words, not just the words. James pivoted to the texts, Exhibit D. My father's sentences projected in 12-point cruelty. Don't embarrass me again. Do as I say. If you can't keep quiet, I'll make sure she replaces you. The room inhaled together and forgot how to exhale. James asked, Who sent these messages? Robert Hale, I said, from his number. Have you seen messages like this before? Yes. Objection. Speculation, his attorney cut in. But it didn't have teeth, James rephrased. Have you personally viewed messages with similar language from that number? Yes. The judge's pen moved. A slim sound, like a violin testing a string. We rolled into money. Exhibit E, credit card statements. Restaurants in neighborhoods where mothers go for anniversaries, not weeknights. Hotels that smile when you call them boutique. Jewelry stores with names that sparkle even when printed black on white. Who benefited from these purchases? James asked. The cardholder, I said. And the person he took? Objection. His lawyer's smile was polished. Assumes facts not in evidence. James didn't glance at him. Withdrawn, he said. Chloe, did any of these items come home to your mother? No. Did your mother authorize any of these charges? No. The judge looked up. Counsel, move to the property issues. James nodded. He lifted a paper with both hands like it had a weight the room needed to feel. Exhibit F, Your Honor. Warranty deed. He walked it to the clerk, who passed it to the judge, who passed the copy to the screen. Our land appeared as paragraphs and parcel numbers. The stamp glowed faintly through the scan, like a bruise under very pale skin. Grantor? James asked. Robert Hale, I said. Grantee? Valerie Kincaid? A sound slid through the benches. Someone's soft gasp. Someone's whispered, "Oh, God." Valerie's legs uncrossed, crossed again. She adjusted the strap on her bag as if leather could save a reputation. James stepped away from the easel. Chloe, do you recognize the legal description? Yes. What is it? Property my mother's father left to our family. Did your mother consent to this transfer? No. Objection. Hearsay. Foundation, James said. Chloe, have you had conversations with your mother about this parcel? Yes. Has she ever indicated she consented? No. The judge's pen moved again. She looked at Robert. Counsel? She asked. His lawyer stood. He talked about misunderstandings and bad nights and private matters made public. He tried to turn cruelty into a miscommunication. He tried to turn fraud into a family squabble. He tried to drape law in a blanket labeled regret. James didn't interrupt. He waited. When it was his turn again, he didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard. Your Honor, nobody should have to litigate their bruises, yet here we are. The photographs, the contemporaneous documentation, the admissions via text, and this deed present a pattern. Violence and erasure running on parallel tracks. The judge nodded once. I'd like to hear from Miss Hale. She meant my mother. Mary stood slowly, like a person untying herself from a chair. I wanted to reach for her hand. I didn't. Strength needs its own stage. She took the oath and sat back straight, fingers laced together in her lap like she finally remembered they were hers. James asked only what was necessary. "Mary, did your husband strike you on the night in question?" "Yes." Her voice wavered on the S, but it held. "Have there been prior instances?" She looked down at her hands. "Up. Yes." "Did you consent to the transfer of the property listed in Exhibit F?" "No." He stopped there. Mercy can be strategic. Robert's attorney cross-examined. He suggested she was confused, misinterpreting. He asked if she had ever bumped a cabinet, tripped on a rug. The air cooled 2 degrees. My mother kept her answers soft and true. "I know what a fall feels like," she said, "and I know what a fist feels like." The room believed her. You could feel the belief settle like dust on polished wood. James called the notary. She testified by phone. She remembered the day, the pressure, the woman who talked faster than the man. The judge asked for the number from the notary journal. It matched the stamp. Paper told on itself. Paper always does. When testimony closed, the judge asked for argument. James stood last. "If the court doesn't believe us, my mother loses everything," I thought, and then realized I had whispered it. Pattern interrupts arrive without permission. They carve the truth into the room. James didn't look back at me, but his next sentence wore that urgency. "The stakes are not abstract," he said. "This is safety. This is shelter. This is a woman's right to remain whole within the law that is supposed to protect her." Silence stretched. The judge leaned forward, elbows on the bench, fingertips together like a steeple. "I have what I need." We stood without being told to. The clerk handed up forms. The judge signed. The sound of her pen was the cleanest sound I'd ever heard. "Protective order granted," she said. "Temporary injunction preserving all community property and freezing transfers related to the parcel described in Exhibit F. The deed is set aside pending further proceedings. I am also referring the matter to the prosecutor for review of the assault and any potential fraud." The words didn't hit all at once. They landed in stages: protective order, injunction, set aside, referral. Each a rung on a ladder I hadn't believed existed at 2 a.m. when my mother bled on my floor. Robert made a sound like a tire losing air. His lawyer touched his sleeve and whispered fast. Valerie stood, then sat, then stood again, sunglasses in hand now, face bare and smaller without the tint. She walked out before the judge left the bench. Her heels bit the aisle and counted her exit. I turned to my mother. Her eyes were wet but clear. She folded into me, not collapsing, not crumbling, just resting like someone who had finally set down a crate she'd carried too many miles. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's begun," I said. "But the worst part?" I think that just ended. Outside, the wind felt different. Not softer. Honest. Reporters didn't swarm. Neighbors didn't mob. The world didn't erupt in applause. Justice rarely comes with trumpets. It shows up wearing a sensible jacket and a deadline and asks you to sign here. We signed. On the steps, James shook our hands as if we had built something together. We had, brick by brick, photo by photo. Word by word a judge could write down without choking on it. If you've stuck with me this far, hear this. Courts won't fix your past, but they can build you a door out of it. Sometimes you just have to knock on it yourself. If someone you love needs that door, show them this story. Pass it on. You never know whose freedom waits on a signature and a spine. The first night after court, the apartment felt like a new house wearing the skin of the old one. Same couch, same crooked picture frame above the TV. But the air didn't press on our lungs. It lifted. You notice that kind of thing when you've been breathing through straws for years. I made tea because that's what you do when you don't know what to do. The kettle hummed, the softest kind of thunder. Mom sat at the table in one of my oversized sweaters. It swallowed her and suited her at the same time. She ran a fingertip around the brim of the mug like she was tracing a map back to herself. No siren in my head. No clock ticking toward disaster. For the first time in months, I heard neighbor noises instead of fear. Water running through pipes, a dog shaking its collar, the elevator groaning like it had stories to tell but no one to tell them to. Peace doesn't arrive with trumpets. It slips under the door and sits at your feet like a patient cat. We didn't talk about the judge's words. We didn't say protective order or injunction. We said, "Do you want honey?" and "Don't burn your tongue." But the legal phrases hovered near the ceiling, quiet guardians in sensible shoes. I could feel their shapes holding the room together. Mom smiled in this broken, brilliant way, like sunrise through scaffolding. "It's strange," she said, hearing my own quiet again. "What does it sound like?" I asked. She tipped her head. "It sounds like the refrigerator." "It sounds like your kettle. It sounds like me." I laughed, and the laugh didn't shatter anything. It landed and stayed. That felt like victory. Later, we unpacked a box that had been waiting too long. Not valuables, survivals. The quilt my grandmother stitched in pieces and prayers. A chipped vase that only ever held dandelions. A photo of my parents on a pier before time started measuring itself in cants. I slid the picture into the back of a drawer, not on the wall, not in the trash. Some histories deserve neither display nor erasure. Mom insisted on making dinner, pasta with too much garlic and exactly the right amount of stubborn. She moved slowly, checking the sauce like it might leave if she looked away. When she tasted it, her shoulders softened. "I used to cook like this all the time," she said, like she'd found a doorway she thought had been bricked over. "Cook like it's your house," I said, "because it is." We ate at the coffee table with our plates balanced on books. The news murmured from the TV, weather, traffic, someone arguing about something that had nothing to do with us. Isn't that a luxury? When the world complains and none of it is aimed at your chest. After we cleaned up, I walked her through the little plan James and I had patched together, locks changed, numbers blocked. A neighbor across the hall who knows to call me if anything looks off. A spare phone hidden in a shoebox. These are the rituals of rebuilding. They don't make you paranoid. They make you ready. She nodded, absorbing rather than resisting. "You shouldn't have to do this," she said. "Maybe. But I get to. That matters." She looked at me for a long time, the way mothers look when they finally see the adult standing where the child used to. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For teaching you to be quiet. For calling it grace." I reached for her hand. "You taught me to stay." Staying isn't the same as silence. And we're not quiet anymore, are we? She shook her head. "No." A small word, big door. Around 9, the building settled into night. The city outside did its noisy lullaby, buses sighing, tires on wet pavement, laughter skipping across the block. I tucked a blanket over Mom's legs and turned off the main light. The lamp by the window painted the room in warm amber, and for a second I had the strangest sensation. This must be what safe looks like. Not sparkling, not cinematic, just steady. I scrolled my phone out of habit and then put it face down. No doom loops tonight. Instead, I opened the voice memo app. I spoke to the red dot like a friend. "Day 1, I said. She smiled. She ate. She called the apartment ours. If you're listening later, please remember, healing has a sound. It's small, but it carries. Pattern interrupt. I caught my reflection in the window. Not the girl who begged doors to open. Not the woman who stormed them. Someone in between. Someone building hinges. You ever look at yourself and think, I might actually be okay? It feels treasonous at first. Then it feels earned. Before bed, Mom stood on the balcony for a minute. The rain had paused, and the city glittered like 1,000 second chances. She closed her eyes, lifted her face, breathed. "I forgot," she said, "how air tastes when it isn't borrowed. We set alarms. Routine is a loyal friend." I stacked the court papers in a tidy pile and slid them into a drawer, not to hide them, to tell them, "You did your job. We'll call you when we need you." I checked the door twice. Okay, 3 times. Healing is not linear, it's a spiral. Some nights you circle the same point and still call it forward. In the dark, I listened for anything that didn't belong. Nothing did. My shoulders dropped. The mattress remembered my shape. Sleep reached for me with both hands. Right before it took me, a thought landed like a feather and refused to leave. I'll share it with you because maybe it's visiting you too. Peace isn't proof the danger is gone. Peace is proof you're still here. That's enough for tonight. If someone you love is crawling back to themselves, don't rush them. Sit with them in the soft noises. Let the quiet do its work. And if this gave you even 1 inch of air, pass it along. You never know whose lungs are waiting. I turned on my side, watched the streetlight draw a rectangle on the wall, and let my eyes close. I thought it was over. I was wrong. The phone rang just past midnight, not a polite ring, a sharp, hungry one. I jolted up, heart pounding like it knew the news before my brain did. Hospitals don't call at that hour for good reasons. When I picked up, the nurse's voice was steady, too steady. "Are you the daughter of Robert Hayes?" "Yes," I said, though the word scraped my throat raw. "He's been admitted. Critical condition. We need family present family." The word hit me sideways. What does family even mean when the man who raised you also broke you? I told Mom. She froze with the remote still in her hand. Her face drained of color like someone had opened a window inside her. "Is he alive?" I answered. "Barely." We didn't speak for a long minute. The TV kept playing a sitcom laugh track, cruel in its timing. Finally, she whispered, "I can't see him. I can't go there." So I went, alone. The hospital corridors smelled of bleach and bad coffee. A nurse pointed me toward intensive care. Machines hummed in chorus, each beep another reminder that life clings on even when it maybe shouldn't. I pushed open the door and saw him, my father, the man who once carried me on his shoulders at the county fair, the man who shoved my mother against the wall. Both truths lived in that bed, tangled in wires. He opened his eyes. They weren't weak. They weren't grateful. They locked onto me with a clarity that sliced. He couldn't speak, oxygen mask muffled him, but his stare carried all the venom words could ever hold. Imagine standing at the foot of a battlefield and realizing the soldier on the ground is still aiming right at you. I didn't move closer. I just stood there, frozen in the doorway. He blinked slowly, deliberately, as if to say, "I'm not done. Don't think you've won." My body remembered every slam door, every bruise disguised as accident. Every night I tucked my mother into silence. My body screamed, "Run!" but my feet refused. Because how do you run from a ghost who's already inside your bloodline? A doctor murmured something about stabilized vitals, about needing signatures. I nodded at the right times, barely hearing. All I could hear was the beeping monitor, steady like a heartbeat, mocking the idea of closure. I left the room and found a chair by the vending machines, plastic seat, harsh lighting. I buried my face in my hands and let out a laugh, sharp, broken, because of course he wouldn't vanish cleanly. Villains don't just exit stage left, they find the spotlight again. On the ride home, rain traced angry rivers down the windows. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom, short and frantic. What did he look like? Did he see you? Did he say anything? I typed back, "Yes, yes." No words. When I walked into the apartment, she was waiting by the door like I was the one who might not come back. Her hands shook when she touched my arms. Was he angry? I hesitated. Yes. Her knees buckled. I caught her before she fell. She clung to me like a drowning woman clutching driftwood. We're not free, she gasped. And maybe she was right. Because freedom isn't just a court order. Freedom is the absence of fear, and fear had just walked back into our living room without knocking. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the building felt like footsteps. Every car outside sounded like a threat idling at the curb. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, knowing he was out there, breathing, waiting. Pattern interrupt? I thought back to when I was 9, feverish and shaking. He sat by my bed then, cold hand on my forehead. He whispered, "You're strong, Chloe. Stronger than you know." For years I held on to that memory like proof of love. Now I wondered, was it encouragement or a warning? The next morning, Mom refused breakfast. She sat in the kitchen with her rosary, lips moving fast. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the rhythm, bargaining with a God she hoped still listened. I wanted to scream at her, shake her, "Don't let him crawl back into your head." But my voice came out small. "We're okay. He can't touch us." She met my eyes, tears sliding unchecked. "You saw him, Chloe. He doesn't need to touch us. He just has to look." That's the thing about ghosts. They don't haunt houses. They haunt the people who lived there. I caught myself staring at the door more than once that day, checking the lock, checking it again. You ever feel safe on paper but not in your bones? That's where I was. I don't know what you'd do in my place. Would you visit him again, to face the stare head on? Would you ignore him, hope time does what justice couldn't? Or would you prepare for the fight you know is coming? I can tell you what I did. I opened my notebook. I wrote down every look, every wordless threat from last night. Because battles aren't just fought in courtrooms, they're fought in memory, in documentation, in the quiet choice to say, "I saw it, it happened, I won't forget." Mom asked me later, "Is it really over?" I couldn't lie. No, not yet. And I could feel it. The story wasn't finished. He wasn't finished. Neither were we. The first envelope showed up on a Tuesday, thin and mean, with my name typed in a font that pretends to be polite, no return address. Just a Houston postmark, and that familiar sinking in my gut, like an elevator skipping a floor. I didn't open it at the mailbox. I carried it upstairs like it might bleed on the carpet. Mom watched me from the kitchen, dish towel in her hands, her eyes already asking questions she didn't want answered. I slid a butter knife under the flap and eased it open. A single sheet, one sentence, centered, bold. "Withdraw your filings, or the truth about what you did at work will come out." Underneath, a signature like a crack. Robert. And below that, a name I didn't know yet. Marcus O'Neill, attorney at law, Houston, Texas. I read it twice. Then I read it out loud. My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. The words did the shaking for me. Mom gripped the counter. "What does he mean?" "What you did at work." I folded the letter back into its envelope and felt the paper's heat against my fingers. "He means fiction," I said. "He means intimidation dressed in a suit. You ever notice how threats come tidy? They use good stationery, they spell check. They hope the formatting will make you forget the rot." 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, a man's voice, smooth as oil. "Ms. Hale, this is Marcus O'Neill representing your father. We have serious concerns about your conduct as a—" He named my department, "and your misuse of privileged systems. We prefer to resolve this quietly. Call me." I played it on speaker. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Misuse? Chloe, you didn't—" "No," I said. "I didn't. And I hadn't." I documented my mother's injuries with a personal phone, filed through the proper channels, stayed 10 miles away from any internal database touching my father. Truth may be messy. Procedure wasn't. But truth doesn't trend. Accusation does. The second wave hit by dinner. Messages from neighbors that felt like compliments at first and turned sideways. Saw something about you online. Hope you're okay. A tag I didn't want on a neighborhood forum. Is it true the daughter used police resources to go after her dad? A selfie of Valerie at a rooftop bar, captioned with a halo emoji and the words, "Not everyone who wears a badge has clean hands. She didn't name me. She didn't have to." I wanted to throw my phone across the room and then file a meticulous report about the impact pattern on the wall. Instead, I opened notes and wrote down each post, screenshot, time, link. I've learned anger is a poor archivist. Documentation isn't. James called before I could call him. "I saw the forum," he said. "No hello." "Of course you did," I said. "Breathe. Tell me exactly what you've received." I read the letter. I played the voicemail. I forwarded the screenshots. He listened the way a bridge listens to wait. No creak, no complaint, just calculation. "Okay," he said. "They're building a narrative. You abused your position to gather evidence. They'll try to toss everything as fruit of a poisoned tree. We respond on two fronts, legal and public." Public? The word felt like a rash. Public, he said, "because rumors are mold. If you don't air the room, they spread." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "I didn't access anything internal." "I know, say it again." "I didn't access anything internal." "Good," he said. "Now we prove it. We'll request a written confirmation from your department's IT of no queries from your credentials. We'll file a notice to preserve logs in case they try to muddy them. On the public side, silence reads like guilt. We'll prepare a short statement. Facts only. You are a daughter reporting a crime with personal documentation, period." Mom hovered in the doorway like a shadow with wrists. "Am I making this worse?" she whispered. I turned to her. "You're making this honest," I said. "That's all." That night, another letter slid under our door. No stamp this time, just boldness. I opened it on the floor, same font, longer sentence. "You will retract the allegations and property claims within 5 days, or we will notify your employer, the press, and the court of your unethical conduct and personal instability." Personal instability. That's how they do it, right? When they can't kill your evidence, they try to kill your credibility. I read it once, twice, then out loud again, and looked straight into the camera of my phone. "If you're watching me," I said to the red dot, "hear this. Abusers write narratives, survivors write records. Guess which one courts read? Quote, pattern interrupt. I remembered a day in training when a senior officer said, 'Integrity is what you do when the camera isn't rolling.' He meant body cams. I thought of kitchens at 1 a.m. I thought of letters slid under doors. Integrity is also refusing to become what they accuse you of, even when becoming it would be the easier way to fight back. By morning, Marcus had sent an email to my department's generic inbox, CCing me, CCing everyone who could turn a smirk into policy. He cited statutes. He attached nothing. He demanded everything. I dressed in a plain blouse and went to my supervisor first thing. Her office plants leaned toward the window like they knew where the light lived. She closed the door, folded her hands. "I received a complaint," she said. "I know. Did you access any non-public system regarding your father?" "No." "Did you use your badge to obtain any favor, access, or leverage?" "No." "Good," she said. "Because we checked before we called you in." She slid a printout across the desk, log entries with dates, and a comforting blank where trouble would have been. "We'll draft a response. You'll write a short memo for your file. Stick to facts. No adjectives you can't prove." James must have been haunting our conversation. His words walked into the room and sat down. I wrote the memo right then. Dates, times, what I did, what I didn't. The paper cooled my nerves like a washcloth to a fever. The Houston lawyer wasn't done. By lunch, he'd posted a letter, public this time, hinting at grave ethical breaches and a young woman drunk on power. The comments roared with strangers' certainties. Half of them wanted my badge, half wanted my head, and a few quietly asked for the facts, as if facts were a spice you could add at the end. I crafted 3 lines and sent them to James. He trimmed them to 2 and sent them back. I reported domestic violence using personal documentation and through proper channels. I did not access any internal systems or use my position in this family matter. I will continue cooperating with internal review and the court. We posted that and nothing else. You fight a grease fire by smothering it, not splashing water. That evening, a certified letter arrived. Return receipt requested, the legal equivalent of a drum roll. Inside, a formal demand to preserve all devices and communications related to my campaign. The word campaign did a bitter little dance on the page. "Good," James said when I called. "They've put it in writing. We'll mirror our own devices, then invite them to find the ghost they invented." Mom watched me pace, watched me sort papers into piles, court, work, online, personal. She started a pot of coffee at 6 p.m., which meant her hands needed something to do. When I sat, she put a mug in front of me and said, "If I hadn't come to your door, this wouldn't be happening to you." I shook my head. "If you hadn't come, it would still be happening to you. Now it's just visible." She nodded, but her eyes stayed wet. "Shame is a stubborn tenant. You don't evict it with one court order." Around 9, the phone rang again. Marcus. I let it ring, picked up on the last buzz. "Miss Hale," he said, "we're prepared to file a motion accusing you of misconduct unless you withdraw." "File it," I said. My voice surprised me, flat, almost bored. "But attach evidence, not adjectives." He paused, recalibrated. "You're very confident for someone with so much to lose." "That's projection," I said. "You have a client with so much to lose? I have a mother." He exhaled sharply and hung up without pleasantries. I looked at Mom. "He'll go public, louder," I said. "But so will we. Cleaner." She took my hand. "What if people don't believe us?" I squeezed back. "Courts don't need everyone. They need enough." Before we slept, I walked through the plan again. Logs preserved, memo filed, statement posted. James drafting a response to the Houston firm that said, in lawyerly poetry, "Put up or hush." We checked the door twice. Okay, 3 times. Ritual, not fear. In bed, the city hummed its sleepless hymn. I stared at the ceiling and thought about reputations. How fragile, how loud, how easy to bruise and hard to heal. And I thought about you, whoever you are, watching this with your own letters on your table, your own neighbor forum sharpening its knives. Here's my question, the only one that matters tonight. When they try to turn your truth into a rumor and your care into a crime, will you let them narrate you? Or will you write the record first? If this helped you breathe, share it. Not for me, for the next person who opens a thin envelope and thinks it contains their future. Sometimes it only contains fear in a better font. Courthouses look different the second time. The bricks don't change, you do. The steps up to King County felt shorter, like I'd already climbed the worst fear and this was just a landing. Still, my stomach did its old gymnastics. Mom walked beside me in a navy sweater that made her look like she could outlast winter. James carried the Redwell like a small animal he intended to keep alive. This wasn't a trial. It was their attempt to claw back what they lost. Robert's motion to reopen, to smear, to scrub. The docket called it reconsideration. It felt like a rematch nobody asked for. Inside, the courtroom hummed low, different judge. Same seal on the wall, same flag snapping softly in the vent. Marcus O'Neill had flown in from Houston, hair perfect, shoes that made tiles wince. He shook hands like a man greeting a camera. Robert sat at counsel table, color back in his face, jaw hard enough to cut thread. Valerie took a seat 2 rows behind him. No sunglasses this time. just the look of someone who thinks the ending has been rewritten in her favor. The clerk called our case. We rose, we sat. The judge glanced at the stack of motions like they were heavy in a way he respected. "Counsel," he said to Marcus, "you may proceed." Marcus did what polished men do. He told a story he hoped would sound inevitable. "Your Honor, we present new evidence indicating that Ms. Hale, employed by—" He named my department, abused her position to gather information against her father, contaminating the original proceeding. We also show substantial questions regarding the mental stability of the complaining witness and the authenticity of the so-called property transfer. Mental stability so early. He couldn't help himself. James didn't flinch. He just uncapped a pen. Marcus called a parade of almosts. A digital forensics consultant who hadn't actually examined my devices, a neighbor who swore the marriage merely had its ups and downs, a bank rep who tried to make joint account sound like permission slip. He sprinkled in legal phrases like confetti, tainted fruit, abuse of discretion, newly discovered evidence. Words that hope to dazzle so you forget to ask for proof. Then he went for me. We believe Ms. Hale accessed internal databases to locate financial and personal data regarding her father. This conduct both violates policy and undermines any trust in the exhibits presented. The judge looked at him over reading glasses. Believe or can demonstrate? Marcus smiled. "We are prepared to subpoena logs, Your Honor." James stood, voice easy. "We save the court time." Logs are already preserved and certified. He handed up a slim folder. "No internal access by Ms. Hale, period," the judge read. His pen made a thoughtful, not angry sound. Noted. He turned to Marcus. "What else?" Marcus pivoted to Mom. "We also have concerns about Ms. Mary Hale's perceptions. There are indications of anxiety, possibly depression." James rose. "Stigma in a suit is still stigma. If Mr. O'Neill intends to offer medical testimony, he should have brought a licensed clinician instead of armchair psychiatry." "Sustained," the judge said without drama. "Stay in your lane, counsel." I could breathe again, just a little. Then came property. Marcus tried to paint the deed as a romantic gesture subsequently misunderstood. That phrase carried the weight of every bruise renamed accident. James waited him out, then slid the notarized journal copy and the title freeze order across the rail like the quiet thunder he'd promised me months ago. Finally, the judge leaned back. "I'll hear from Ms. Hale," he said, looking at me. I stood, palms flat on my skirt to stop the tremor from learning it could be seen. James walked me through foundation. Name, role, what I had and had not done. The facts lined up like good soldiers. I kept adjectives out of my mouth, even the ones begging to be heroic. When he asked about the night my mother arrived, about the photos, about the timing, the room held its breath and let me have the air. Marcus crossed. He tried to shake me, not with fists, but with italics. "You say you didn't access internal systems, yet you knew account numbers." "My mother knew them," I said. She told me in front of counsel. "You say you took those photographs moments after she arrived. Isn't it true you could have staged—" "No," I said, and let the word sit at the center of the room until it cooled. He moved to righteousness. "You say you care about the law, and yet you ambushed your father in court." "I followed process," I said. "I didn't ambush anyone." I stopped being quiet. He smiled like a razor. "Very noble. Very necessary," I said. The judge lifted a hand. "That's enough on this line." Marcus stepped back, but only to take a longer running start. "Your Honor, we also have a credibility issue. Prior to this proceeding, Ms. Hale made statements on social media and recorded herself at length. She is building a narrative. She is not a neutral witness." James stood, calm. Documenting and narrating are not mutually exclusive. Survivors report, then they tell the truth again out loud so they remember they exist. The question is whether the record matches the retelling. Here it does. And if counsel wants to talk about narratives, he should listen to his clients. The room shifted. You could feel the tide deciding what kind of shore to be. Then James did something he'd warned me would be the hinge. He tapped the Redwell. "Your Honor, one additional exhibit," Marcus bristled. "Not in our briefing." "Oh, supplemental," James said, and slid a USB in a small envelope to the clerk. "Previously unknown. Recently authenticated. Carrier logs attached, quote." The judge looked down. "What is it?" "A voicemail," James said, "from Robert Hale to my client. Time-stamped 3 days after the initial hearing, 2 days before this motion was filed." He nodded toward me. "She did not respond. She preserved it." We obtained confirmation from the carrier and matched the metadata. "The content goes to threats, coercion, and intent to subvert these proceedings." Marcus turned red in a very controlled way. "We object. Foundation, relevance." "Overruled," the judge said, just as controlled. "Play it. Pattern interrupt." If you've ever sat in a courtroom with a dozen hearts thudding in the same room waiting to hear a single human voice tell on itself, you know the electricity that fills your spine. It's not joy. It's recognition. James nodded to the clerk. The speakers clicked alive with a little hiss. I stared at the wood grain on counsel table because looking at my father while hearing him would have made my body split down the middle. Then his voice filled the room, steady, not hoarse, not apologetic. "Chloe." A pause. "You think you're clever. You think paper will save her? It won't. You want to play cop? I'll show you how that ends. You'll lose your job. You'll lose your face in this town. I'll make sure Valerie handles the rest. Withdraw. Or I'll burn it all down and tell them you lit the match." He hung up. The recording stopped. The hiss lingered an extra second like it wasn't ready to let the silence back in. Nobody moved, not even the flag. The judge's jaw tightened. "Counsel," he said to Marcus, soft and lethal. Marcus's mouth opened, recovered. "Your Honor, no context. No carrier logs or context," James said, handing up the packet. "Call length, originating number, timestamp. We also have a second exhibit, screenshots of coordinated posts by Ms. Kincaid within an hour of the call. Correlation is not causation, but even correlation starts to sing at this volume." Valerie's hands clasped in her lap. Her knuckles went white, the color of secrets that realize they're bad at hiding under fluorescent lights. The judge breathed once, deep. "I'm admitting the recording for what it's worth. And I'll tell you, counsel, it's worth more than you want it to be." Marcus tried to pivot. Even if the tone is unfortunate, it does not address the core issue. Ms. Hale's alleged misuse of alleged and disproven, the judge cut in, tapping the IT logs. "What else?" He had nothing else that didn't sound like smoke. He said a few more lawyerly words because airtime is currency in that job. Then he sat, a man who had practiced victory posture and wasn't sure where to put his hands when it didn't fit. James stood last. He didn't swell. He didn't shine. He spoke like a carpenter checking the last joint. "Your Honor, this isn't about narratives. It's about gravity, assault, a deed transferred in the dark, threats to intimidate a witness. Counsel wants the court to pretend the floor isn't there. We prefer the floor. We ask you to stand on it with us." The judge closed the file. "I'm taking the matter under advisement." That's judge, for I know what I'm going to do. I'll do it in writing so it stands." He looked straight at Robert. "Mr. Hale, you are not to contact your daughter again, directly, indirectly, through counsel, through anyone." He shifted to the gallery. "And anyone assisting you would be wise to hear that too." Valerie stared at the seal on the wall as if it could unsee her. We were dismissed. People rustled to their feet the way wheat rustles before wind. In the aisle, a stranger squeezed my shoulder, quick, gentle, anonymous. It felt like a vote that didn't need a signature. Mom and I stepped into the hallway. She pressed her palm to my cheek in a way she hadn't since I was 14, and pretending I wasn't scared of thunderstorms. "I heard his voice," she whispered, in a room where I wasn't the only one who heard it. "That's the point," I said. "We're not alone with it anymore." Down the corridor, Marcus cornered Valerie, whispering the kind of whisper that's really yelling in a tuxedo. Robert stood 10 feet away, face cracked open with something that wasn't rage exactly, not grief either. Maybe recognition, the first bad mirror he'd been forced to look into. He saw me looking. For the first time since this began, he looked away first. Outside, the sky had gone that clean blue Seattle manages after it wrings itself out. James joined us on the steps. He didn't grin. He doesn't do confetti. He said, "We gave the court everything it needs." "And if it still isn't enough?" I asked, because someone should say the quiet fear out loud. "Then we bring more," he said. "But today?" He tilted his head toward the sunlight. "Today the record spoke." I took Mom's hand. We stood there, 3 people stitched together by a file, a voice, and the kind of stubborn that builds doors. I breathed in air that didn't taste like dread. Not sweet, not triumphant, just honest. If you're still with me, if your own case is a stack on a kitchen table and a knot in your throat, hear this. There comes a moment when the story shifts from what they said to what they can prove. When it comes, play it. Let the record speak louder than the rumor. And when they ask you if you're sure, you can say, with a steady voice and a steady hand, yes. We walked down the steps. The city didn't cheer. It didn't need to. The ground felt level for the first time in a long time. And maybe, just maybe, that's what a turning point really is. Not fireworks, balance. Share this with someone who needs to hear a door opening inside a room that used to have none. Sometimes the hinge is as small as a recorded sentence and as heavy as a life. The order arrived on a Thursday morning, the kind of gray Seattle throws on like a sweater. It came by email first, PDF attachment, subject line plain enough to make your heart misread it, then by certified mail with the green card you sign like a vow. I opened the email at the kitchen table while Mom buttered toast in slow, careful strokes, as if the bread might bruise. "Is it there?" she asked, eyes on the knife. "It's here," I said. "From the court. We didn't rush." "We sat the way you sit before the last page of a book you've been reading in the dark," I clicked. The document bloomed on the screen, black words on white, the way truth dresses when it wants to be taken seriously. The first line snapped the knot I'd been carrying under my ribs. Motion denied. My breath came out like I'd been underwater and forgot air was free. "They denied everything," I said. "All of it." Mom set the knife down like you set down a thing that's finished hurting you. "All of it?" "All of it," I said again, because repetition turns fact into shelter. Motion denied. Prior orders affirmed. Permanent restraining order granted. Property transfer voided and title restored pending final distribution. She put a hand to her throat. I watched her face do this quiet miracle, every muscle relearning how not to brace. "Permanent?" she whispered, as if the word could scare easily. I read the lines out loud because sometimes the body trusts sound more than sight. The judge's language was measured, unpoetic, and beautiful for exactly that reason. He found the threats credible. He found the evidence untainted. He found our witnesses steady. He found the deed worse than a mistake. He called it an act, inconsistent with equity. In court, that's a scarlet letter you never get to peel off. I forwarded the order to James. He called before I could finish typing thank you. "It's clean," he said. "It's strong. It's careful. Exactly what we wanted, quote." Does it stick? I asked. It sticks, he said. They can appeal if they want to burn money for sport, but it sticks. I put the phone down and turned the screen so Mom could read. She touched the trackpad like it might purr. Her eyes moved line by line. By the end, she was crying without the ugly part, just water finding its level. I get to keep my name, she said. On my life, on my land, on your future, I said. We didn't pop champagne. We washed the mugs. We opened the window. The city breathed in with us. Peace doesn't shout. It pads around the room, checking the corners for you. By noon, the certified copy arrived. The envelope thumped against the door like a polite knock from a different world. I signed. The courier nodded, and I laid the paper on the table like a newborn sleeping. The seal shone under the light. The court's name ringed the page like a hand you could lean against. Minutes later, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A woman's voice, clipped and formal. Miss. Hail. This is the clerk's office confirming service of the permanent order. Any violation should be reported immediately. I saved the message. I save everything now, not out of fear, out of muscle. Documentation is Faith's practical cousin. We called the locksmith anyway. He rekeyed the doors, oiled the hinges, taught the deadbolt a new language. He didn't ask why. The receipt read peace of mind service. I kept it. Around 3, James stopped by with pastries and photocopies. He moves through victories like a man who understands they are bridges, not beaches. He sat, folded his long body into our chair, and pointed to one paragraph. Why? Read this one more time. I did. Respondent is enjoined from direct or indirect contact with petitioner or her daughter. Violations will be sanctioned, including referral for criminal contempt. Indirect, he said. That's the magic word. It closes the loopholes, Mom exhaled. So, no more letters. No more late-night calls. No more, James said, with the gravity of a chapel. We ate pastries over the sink like teenagers. Sugar flaked down onto the plates like confetti that had suddenly remembered it hated mess. James left with a half smile. You did this, he said at the door, by refusing to be quiet and by refusing to be sloppy. When he was gone, the apartment felt taller. I don't know how else to explain it. Like the ceiling agreed to stop lowering itself every time a floorboard creaked. Mom went to the balcony with her quilted sweater and the permanent order tucked in a plastic sleeve, like weather might envy it. She held the paper against the rail and let the sun run over the seal. I want light on it, she said. Just for a minute. We took a walk. Ballard smelled like coffee beans and wet cedar. At the consignment shop on the corner, Mom paused at a blue lamp with a chipped base. It's imperfect, she said, as if that were a compliment. We bought it. We carried it home in turns like a trophy you're not supposed to call a trophy. On the way up the stairs, Mrs. Patel from 2B leaned over the railing. I saw your post, she said softly. Proud of you. She didn't ask for details. She handed us a Tupperware of cardamom cookies and the kind of look that makes a neighborhood. When we got back, messages were blooming like cautious flowers. My supervisor emailed, internal review closed. No policy violations. I read the line twice and felt that particular relief that tastes like metal leaving your mouth. The neighbor forum had quieted. Valerie's rooftop photos went missing one by one, as if the internet can be shamed into housekeeping. Robert didn't call. Marcus didn't write. Silence can be a sentence. This one was, night came gentle. I cooked pasta that wasn't a coping mechanism anymore, just dinner. Mom set the blue lamp on the bookshelf and switched it on. The room warmed an inch. We ate at the table because the coffee table had carried enough weight. Between bites, she asked, What now? Now we live, I said. Boring is the goal. She laughed, the new kind, the one without apology. I can do boring. I want boring. After dishes, we filed the order in a thick folder labeled with a black marker that bled a little into the paper. Mary, orders and deeds, keep. I placed it on the shelf next to the manuals for appliances I don't love but intend to keep alive. Let the extraordinary sit next to the ordinary. That's where it belongs. Pattern interrupt. Before bed, I opened the voice memo app again. I recorded the quiet. No sirens. No drafts of dread blowing under the door. Just the refrigerator's soft engine and the blue lamp humming a color you could almost hear. Then I spoke. Day 1 of permanent, I said. Permanent is a strange word. It means we get to forget it sometimes. I know what you might be thinking. Does he obey it? Does he fade? Do ghosts honor ink? I don't know. I can't promise you the future. Paper can order. It can't predict. But here's what I can tell you. The first night with a permanent order, my mother slept with both hands open. Not closed around terror, open. That's not nothing. That's not small. The next morning, sunlight found us on purpose. Mom made coffee strong enough to rename the day. She put on lipstick the color of a good bruise healing. I feel visible, she said, and didn't flinch at the word. We went to the county recorder's office together to file the title corrections the court had ordered. The clerk, a man with a tie patterned in tiny sailboats, stamped each page with pleasant violence. There you go, he said, as if he'd just fixed a zipper. He slid the papers back through the window. Authority can be so human it breaks your heart. At lunch, I texted James a photo of the stamped deed. He replied with 3 words he doesn't waste. Record, rebuild, rest. On the bus home, a little girl sat across from us holding a balloon shaped like a star. She offered it to Mom, solemn, as if conferring rank. Mom tied it to her wrist and pretended it might carry her a few inches off the seat. For a second, it did. Back in our kitchen, we taped a copy of the order inside the pantry door. Not as a threat to ourselves, as a promise. Every time we reach for flour, we'll see it. Every time we refill the sugar, we'll remember sweetness can be stored. We won't worship the paper. We'll just greet it like a neighbor. If you're here with me still, if you have your own stack of letters and sleepless nights, I'll say it plain. Justice is not an event. It's a practice. You do it again and again. File, testify, breathe, repeat, until the echo becomes a wall between you and the hands that hurt you. Some days the wall is paper. Some days it's people, both count. So share this if you want. Share it with the friend who keeps a go bag by the door. Share it with the uncle who says, family is private like it's a spell. Share it with yourself on the nights you need proof that small truths add up to big safety. I stood by the window before bed and looked out at the city. Streetlights marked the corners like commas. Cars moved like sentences. Somewhere, Valerie was deciding whether the internet still loved her. Somewhere, my father was learning what silence felt like on the other end of a phone. Here, in our small bright square, Mom put her hand on my back and said, "You did it." "No," I said, "we did it." Then I added what I hadn't let myself say until now, not because I was superstitious, but because I wanted to taste it and not be afraid. And we're done. We turned off the lamp. The room kept a little of its blue. I lay down and let the world close softly. One last thought rose and settled, the way the good ones do when you don't force them. Justice isn't loud. It's consistency, spoken clearly, signed clearly, enforced clearly. Justice must be repeated. If this gave you even a half breath, take it. If it gave you a full one, pass it on. Someone out there is waiting at a door at 1 a.m, and they need to hear that a door can open toward safety. Sometimes the hinge is a judge's signature. Sometimes it's yours.